I'm going to tell you about the time I passed up $20 million. It's not clickbait. This actually happened. The reason I'm mentioning it at all, because I don't like to talk about it, is in the video I did recently where I talked about losing 300,000 in 2 days, and it's money that I need for living because I early retired at 53, and this is supposed to last me forever. Some people were empathetic in the comments, and other people were kind of gloating, implying that I'm a terrible investor or that I should be lucky I had enough that I could lose 300,000 or things like that. And I think it'll sort of give you a view of how I view money, and hopefully it'll help you think about money in a different way as well. But the $20 million, absolutely real. Did not make any of this up. So when I graduated law school and I worked a couple of years at a law firm, I ended up at a federal regulator, which was involved in the financial markets. And there was this weird little area of the financial markets dealing with foreign currency that just through some quirk of history and bad legislation and bad legal precedent, this agency had been put in charge of. I had just started there, and the person who was in charge of foreign currency left for another job, so they gave it to me. And I had to deal with registering these companies and dealing with fraudsters that were involved in them. And I had so many calls dealing with old ladies and financially unsophisticated people that were targeted by these fraudsters, that it was just very jarring for me. And we had civil authority, not criminal authority. So when we would go after these firms, the most that our enforcement division could do is get that money back, but we couldn't prosecute them criminally. And I would help work on some of these cases. I was in the registration branch, not enforcement, but this is such a specialized area that I had to pitch in and help them. It really got to me that we could only take their money. We couldn't put them in jail because a lot of them were doing this over and over again. And if we caught them, we would take the money back, but they would just start doing it over and over again. And they had no fear of prison, and they lived in nice houses and drove nice cars. And I would get these calls from people who had their lives devastated by these people. And, it just really bugged me. And we would refer this to the DOJ for criminal prosecution, the FBI, the DOJ, and they would not get involved in this. So those are agencies that have criminal authority, but they would not get involved in this. And one time I did see that they did get involved criminally, and we had a press conference downstairs, and they had seized like $100 million and arrested the people. And so I went to talk with one of the FBI agents, and I said, we keep referring these cases to you. How come you don't get involved and put these people behind bars, because they just keep doing it over and over again? And he said, this is a very low priority for us. And if it's less than 20 million, we won't even take a look at it. So don't send us anything less than 20 million, because we won't even look at the documents you send us. We won't read the email. Just 20 million or more, we'll take a look. Maybe we'll do something, but under 20 million, we won't do anything. And I said, there's no case where you would take a look, even if it's less than 20 million. And he said, well, we might look if it's 10 and there was some terrorism angle. But other than that, 20 million, not interested. So at the time, there was a problem with the regulation of these products. And they were required to register with our agency, but we only had anti-fraud authority over them. So we had to wait until they did something wrong and then sue them. And then only after that, take the money back, couldn't put them in jail. And because it was only anti-fraud authority, no other authority, we were not allowed to promulgate rules for these transactions. And what happened is, because there were no rules for this, a lot of people who were banned from the securities industry because they were literally convicted felons got involved in this retail foreign currency stuff, what everyone calls forex. And as I said, I had just spoken to the FBI and the DOJ, who told me 20 million or less, we won't even take a look at it. And I was having this conversation with my coworker, and I was just really upset about it. And he said, it takes 400,000 to set up an FCM, which is the entity that you'd have to set up. He said, like, I don't have 200,000 in the bank, but neither do you. We could put our money together and start one of these. What's to keep us from doing it? And he was half joking, but I said, no, I know where you're getting at, but I don't want to be a piece of crap, so I won't do that. And 400,000 to set up this entity, and then you could steal up to 20 million, never go to jail. If they caught you, the worst that they can do is take the money back, and then you can just keep doing it over and over, no consequences whatsoever. And you might say, well, setting up one of these entities, that might cost money, right? Let me remind you that I'm a lawyer and I worked at this agency in the section that registers these entities. So it would cost me zero. And I was a law student, and I was a recent graduate of law school, had almost $100,000 in debt, and was making a government salary. So $20 million would have been great for me. But I was also the guy that took the calls from these retirees and these teachers and these plumbers that had been ripped off by these people and had their lives destroyed. So $20 million to be the type of person that does that is not something that I wanted to do. Then it got easier because there were a couple of cases that went against the agency, one called Zellner and one called Erskine, and said, like, we had no authority over certain types of these transactions. So if you drafted them a certain way, which I knew how to do because I worked there, now not only would you not go to jail if it was less than 20 million, but they couldn't take the money back because federal courts had said in the Seventh Circuit and the Second Circuit that you have no authority at all over this. No one has authority over this. Shortly after that, a loophole appeared where you could register as a broker-dealer with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and they have different categories of broker-dealer, and one of them, the lowest one, you can register with as little as $18,000 and engage in this type of activity. And again, we wouldn't have jurisdiction. They wouldn't have jurisdiction. You could steal all you want. We couldn't take it back. The SEC couldn't take it back. And if it was less than 20 million, the FBI and DOJ wasn't involved. And the only time they would look at these cases when they were more than 20 million is when we would work up the case and give them all the evidence on a silver platter. And now that they would have to do all that work themselves, yeah. And this SEC category of broker-dealer, $18,000. So now it wasn't 400,000 anymore, and you can steal up to 20 million. And the worst thing that could happen is they'll take it back. Now it's $18,000 and you can steal up to 20 million. They'll never get the money back. And if you don't go over 20 million, you'll never be arrested. You'll be fine. But you would still be that type of person that would do that to little old ladies, to plumbers, to people that work for a living, financially unsophisticated people, destroying their lives. And that's not something I wanted to be a part of. So I wasn't tempted to that. You know, I could have had $20 million. And if you have a lot of debt, when I got out of law school, I did. And if you come from a poor background, which I did, and if you have family members that need money, you know, my dad's not rolling in dough, my mom has medical issues, that $20 million would have been wonderful. But I didn't want to be that type of person. I'm going to bring up the case of the guy who went to jail for crypto fraud, SBF. And if you read the newspaper articles and follow what happened, not only did he deserve to go to jail, but both his parents, who were lawyers and knew better, were involved in it. And even though they didn't go to jail, he transferred a lot of the funds to them and, bought them multi-million-dollar houses and donated to their foundations and everything like that. And whether or not you think they were involved in the fraud, they were participating in the grift because they were getting proceeds from it. And there's emails between the mother and father, because they were both advisors to his company, where one of them is sort of telling the other one to put pressure on him to send money to this nonprofit that they're also running. because he hadn't cut them a check. So um, just think about that type of person where if you have your child who is committing crimes that will send them to prison, and not only are you not advising them and helping them to stop what they're doing and to do the right thing, but you're taking money from them. You're helping them in a way that's going to make it harder for the victims to get their money back. You're going to do things to make it harder for him to get caught. Your interest is getting as much as you can for yourself in terms of a house and donating money to these things that you run, instead of helping your kid to not do something that's going to put them in prison. That's a strange way to think about money, right? And I said before in another video that money is a story. If you have food on the table, if you have a roof over your head, um, more than that, it's a story that you're telling yourself. And if you're telling yourself a story that makes you do horrible things like that, like ripping off old people, scamming people, and using your parents to hide the money, things that you'd be embarrassed if your neighbors, if your kids saw in the newspaper about you, if that's the kind of story that you tell yourself about money that makes you do those type of things, you should tell yourself a different story about money. So I enjoyed working for my agency, and for years I was the foreign currency guy, FX, forex, whatever you want to call it. I was the guy. The rules that these banks have to comply with, I wrote those rules. I've spoken at conferences, and so it would have been very easy for me to take that knowledge and use it in that window where no one had jurisdiction over this, and you can steal as much as you want, up to 20 million. And the FBI was not interested. And during that brief window, neither my agency nor the SEC could get that money back because the courts had said you have no jurisdiction over this. All I would have to do is put up this 18,000 and I could have stolen up to 20 million, and I didn't. I was not tempted at all. So that's a story I tell myself about money, that people are more important than money, and that I'm not going to do something that would make it hard for me to look myself in the mirror, uh, or that I would be embarrassed to see about myself in the paper. And when I think about the Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX story and how his parents were involved in the horrible things he was doing that rightfully put him behind bars, um, I think about my uncle. And my uncle is from Chile, and my family comes from the Patagonia region. So for since the 1700s, when my first ancestor came to Chile, they've been involved in cattle ranching and timber and things like that, and just hardworking country folk, and honest as the day is long. My grandfather, great grandfather, great great grandfather, all involved in cattle ranching, and all my uncles were cattle ranchers and competed in rodeos. But one of my uncles became an accountant, and he worked for the Chilean equivalent to the IRS, and he also taught accounting at a college, and he was as honest as the day is long. And I remember when I went down to visit in 2019 and we had to change some dollars for pesos at a bank. So we went to a bank and got in line, and one of the people in one of the offices was a student of his, a former student from when he taught accounting classes, and came out from there and said, like, "Oh, professor, how are you doing? What are you doing here?" And he said he came to change some money. And she said, "Oh, you don't have to wait in line, just come with me." And he said no, because to him, if you treated him differently than you would treat anyone else, that is a form of corruption, according to him. So even though he was in his 80s, he would rather wait in line than accept any form of favoritism that would look anything like what to him was corruption. And when I think about Sam Bankman-Fried and his family, and those stories that they tell themselves about money, let's say I had taken that $20 million, and then my uncle visited me and he saw this mansion with the pool and the Ferrari, and he asked, "Where did you get all this money?" And I said, "I stole it." Would never talk to me again, obviously, because that's the type of person he is. And I admire that. I admire that. And that's the type of person I want to be. I don't want to be a person with a lot of money who got it doing unethical things because people judge other people by money, unfortunately. And if you have enough, like the Sackler family, who literally destroyed thousands of people's lives, people died with OxyContin that they spread throughout the US. And they tried to wash it away by buying wings in museums and putting their names on it and stuff like that. And if you have if you have enough money, a lot of times people overlook where it came from. But I don't want to be one of those people. So I'm okay with how much I have and what I have and how I got it. I really enjoyed working for the government and I liked helping people. And I liked it when I got there. And after this thing came up where I could have left easily because I knew all the pieces and made $20 million, and it just never occurred to me. I liked it a lot more after that because if I can pass up $20 million, then I'm not tempted to do other things for money. And what I'd like to also bring up that's related to this is the number of law firms, large law firms that have capitulated to the current administration. And one of them, Skadden, which is one of the largest law firms in the world, and they have a revenue of $2 billion a year, and they are hired by the biggest corporations. They were one of the first ones to cave and agree to do $100 million of free work in exchange for not being targeted by the current administration. And that just really is offensive to me. Because, like I said, if you tell yourself a story about money that makes you do things that you wouldn't be proud to tell your grandkids about, maybe you should tell yourself a different story about money. I remember there used to be a sign for mass transit. It went viral for the train company, and it said, you're not stuck in traffic, you are traffic. And, if you're driving along on the highway and you see that sign, it kind of makes sense, right? Like, yeah, I'm complaining about the traffic, but I am traffic. And if you don't want to be in traffic, you can take the train, you can take a bike, you can take a walk. It's more inconvenient, but not only are you not part of traffic, you're not making you're not making it worse. You're not making the problem worse by doing what you're doing. And what I think is, as a lawyer, is so shameful about these law firms is that they're making the problem worse. And so that thing about that sign where it said, you're not stuck in traffic, you are traffic. If you replace that with corruption, what do you have? You're not stuck in corruption, you are corruption. They don't like the fact that they had to give $100 million and were shaken down by the current administration. Well, then don't give it. Stand up for yourself, right? By doing that, you're becoming part of the corruption, and it's only going to get worse, right? The more people come and sit in traffic, the worse traffic gets. You're not sitting in traffic, you are traffic. So that's my thought. And I know there's only 300 something subscribers, so no one will probably see this except my subscribers. But I just figured I'd put it out there. Um, I've been doing a lot of thinking about the way things are running lately in this country, and so many grifters, not only in the office, but seeking favor from the office, people that a couple of years ago you might have thought like, oh, that's a fine, upstanding citizen. I would love to have them as my neighbor or someone I work with or work for. And now you see that there's no amount of grift that is too much for this administration. And people are coming out of the woodwork to try to get theirs while they can because of the stories they tell themselves about money. And some of them are cooperating, and other ones are cowering and just doing whatever it takes to get along. And I know I mentioned a law firm before. They're not the only ones. There's several other law firms that caved as well. But there's also other firms that have stood up and said, like, no, and we're going to take you to court. We're going to sue. We're going to stand up for our clients. You don't tell us who to represent. You don't tell us how to represent. A lot of universities caved also because they want the money. And Harvard stood up and said they were going to sue because, that's not who we are. So I think we need more of that, right? If you don't like corruption, don't be a part of it. I know it's easier to just give in and be a part of it, but if you're doing something that you're not proud of, then don't do it. And, maybe this just comes from a personal view because there are people in Chile who were close to Pinochet and became billionaires, including his son in law, including several of his advisors. And there are people who did nothing. There are people who cooperated and did very well. And then there are people like my family who resisted and, suffered consequences for it. I have several relatives who were tortured. One was thrown out of an airplane. My grandfather was one of the ones who was tortured. He was almost killed. Um, and so don't count me as one of the ones who's going to go along to get along and go in with corruption. I don't need the biggest house you've ever seen. I don't need fast cars. I don't need 7 or 8 girlfriends and 14 kids uh, like a certain car maker. I like who I am. I like looking in the mirror and seeing somebody I respect. Elon Musk now walks around with bodyguards and a bulletproof vest because people hate him. I don't wear a bulletproof vest. I don't have a bodyguard. Um, in my 25 years of being a lawyer, I don't think there's anyone you can find either that worked with me or worked across from me on the other side that would hate me enough that they would come after me because they thought they had been treated unfairly. And there's certainly nothing unethical that I did when it comes to money that I would need to look over my shoulder. So I'm okay with how I am and how big my house is, and that we have one car instead of 5 um, Ferraris or anything like that. And while I was working at the government, I had gotten offers to work at law firms or in house at other places, calls from headhunters. And sometimes I was tempted and sometimes I wasn't. But the one time I was not tempted was one of these places that was involved in foreign currency, and they had been in a lot of trouble and they wanted to hire somebody. And sometimes a law firm will offer to pay you twice what you're making at the government. And this was more like 3.5 times when I did the math, plus options for stock and everything else. Uh, but when I interviewed with them, I was sort of feeling them out like, were they in a lot of trouble and they wanted somebody to help them straighten up and fly right? Or were they looking for somebody who could just help them keep being corrupt and make it harder for them to get caught? And it was the second one. And so that was an easy no for me because, like I said, once I passed up millions and millions, um, it's easy to pass up other things for money because you've sent a signal to yourself that this is who I am. Um, and there's going to be people that when they die are so rich that you're going to see their name in the paper, and there'll be buildings named after them. Colleges will have their names on buildings. All their descendants will have um, billions as well. I won't be one of them, and that's okay. That's okay. Um, Nothing I did caused anyone to die of OxyContin. Nothing I did caused some retiree to have a horrible life because I ran a Ponzi scheme or anything like that. I was a civil servant and I was helping regulate the financial markets, prevent people from getting scammed by Ponzi schemes. And I liked what I did. And I'm happy I retired when I did because I left at the right time and I don't have to be involved in working for this current administration. And even with the 30% tumble in the stock market, I've got enough. And, I've had job interviews. And even though I am the world's worst interviewer, eventually somebody will hire me. And if it's the right job, I'll take it. If it's not, I'll just keep doing these YouTube videos that no one watches and I'll be okay. And you'll be okay too. Um, so, as I said, these videos usually get like 50 or 60 views. So I don't see I don't see any point in not telling this story. I avoided telling this story in my private life because uh, you sort of find out who people are when you tell them something like this because people who you thought were respectable were like, 20 million. Can I still do that? And, like, no, they've changed the laws. Some of the rules written which prevent that are stuff that I've drafted, and I'm very proud of it. So I do mention it now because if you thought, well, this guy on the internet said you can do this and the FBI won't go after you. Well, it's changed now. You can't do it the same way anymore. So now if you want to set up one of these forex outfits, it actually takes $20 million, not 18,000 or 400,000. It actually takes $20 million. So unless you're already a really good thief and want to get into this business, it's not for you. Anyway, that's enough for today. Have a great day, everyone.